right, welcome back to our Well Executive webcast series. I am so amped for our conversation today. Where am I even going to begin? Many people know Rick as one of the founders of the modern green building movement, but what's always struck me is how long he's been quietly shaping this work, even before it had a name or a logo or a conference. Rick didn't come into this movement because it was fashionable. The movement didn't even exist long before USGBC, long before LEED became shorthand for sustainability and green. Rick was at Carrier, an air conditioning manufacturer that was a Fortune 50 behemoth, or part of one anyhow. It was United Technologies back then. And his first job was selling air conditioners before he moved up the ranks to be director of environmental marketing, one of the world's first chief sustainability officers. He tells the story about finding a copy of Paul Hawken's book, Ecology of Commerce, at a bookstore in a desperate quest to figure out what he was actually supposed to be doing in that role. And soon he wasn't just talking about better equipment, he was asking deeper questions about responsibility, performance, the role that business could play in shaping a healthier future. And that thread, the belief that industry can be a force for good when it's aligned around the proper goals, runs through everything that Rick has done ever since. Rick went on to help found the US Green Building Council, and he didn't just create an organization, he created a platform for market transformation, one that gave people language, tools, and permission to care about how buildings perform for people and the planet. He once said that we only needed three things: a standard or rating system, people to educate the world about that rating system, our APs, and a place to bring them together, which was Greenbuild. First as founding chair, then CEO. That's how USGBC grew from a bold idea into a global movement. And LEED went from an experiment to a standard that's used in nearly every country around the world. The AP community grew to more than 200,000, and Greenbuild, during his time as CEO, was the largest sustainability and green building conference in the world. But what made that growth remarkable wasn't just scale, it was credibility. And Rick insisted that sustainability had to be rigorous, measurable, and economically viable for everyone, businesses and consumers alike, if it was going to last. But here's something I think people sometimes forget. Rick was building all of this at a time when the market didn't have that vocabulary. They weren't asking for it. He literally created demand by showing what was possible, by bringing unlikely partners together, and by refusing to accept that environmental performance and business success were somehow at odds. He called that perspective greenthink. He even wrote a book about it. You should definitely check it out. Even after he stepped away from his role at USGBC into his role as IWBI's first CEO, Rick has continued to be one of the most renowned and thoughtful voices in our field. He challenges us to raise the bar, to stay grounded in the evidence, and to never lose sight of the human outcomes behind the metrics. We're going to get to talk a little bit about that today. Long before it was trendy, he knew that every story about green building was a story about people. So please join me in welcoming my longtime boss, mentor, and friend, also chairman of the IWBI board, Rick Fedrizzi.
Hi, Rachel.
We're all clapping. We're all clapping. Welcome. I'm so excited to be doing
Hello,
this with you.
everyone. Wow, I know who is going to deliver my eulogy now. I just want you to know you've got a future job ahead of you. Hopefully not for a long time, but
I hope not
what
for
a
a long
beautiful
time.
opening. Thank you. Great to be here, and thank you everyone who's joined to be a part of this. It's really great.
Well, and thanks to my co-collaborator on that intro, Judith Webb, because we both had fun thinking about all of the different ways in which we might sing your praises. I let that intro run a little bit long, but you know why. Nobody has credentials like this guy, and I just wanted to make sure we are all on the same page before I hope to introduce you to a side of Rick Fedrizzi that I don't think most of you have gotten to meet yet. So before I get started, let me just take a moment to thank our generous sponsor of the Well Executive platform, Daikin, who's been leading innovation in heating, air conditioning, and ventilation technology for over 100 years, and whose generous support makes this interview and the Well Executive platform possible. Now, okay, as is our tradition, Rick, let's get this party started with a little speed round. So
Sure.
I've prepped you on the concept, not on the questions. You ready for some rapid fire responses?
Sure.
Okay. All right. This first one is one that I did with the Surgeon General. I understand you caught up on his webcast. I asked him to name all of the jobs that he had ever had in less than 1 minute. So let's see how many jobs you've had that you can name in less than 1 minute. I'm going to start my timer. Ready, go.
Okay, before 14, shoveled driveways and cut lawns. Then I had a paper route. Then I got a job at Friendly Ice Cream scooping fribble. Then I got a job at a butcher supermarket in the butcher department cutting up beef. Then after that, it was a liquor store, UPS, right to after college, Carrier Corporation. After Carrier Corporation, Greenthink LLC. After Greenthink, it was U.S. Green Building Council, and then IWBI, the International Well Building Institute, to where we are today.
Oh my God, with 17 seconds to spare, that was very impressive. And also
Unlike
for
unlike
someone at
Dr.
your stage,
Carmona,
short.
unlike Dr. Carmona, I had a much smaller sphere of influence and interest in my life. So,
Your
you know,
resume is slightly more compact for sure. You have longevity at a lot of these places.
longevity.
All right, that was amazing. Um, Also, a lot of meat involved in that work history. All right, how about this? 3 words that people would use to describe you as a boss.
As a boss,
Hmm.
loyal, someone who is friendly but with candor. And I guess that's 3, but I probably should also include that I am truly engaged in their
Mm,
lives and who they
mm.
are as people.
Agree with all of those things. Well done. How about favorite travel hack for road warriors?
Favorite travel hack is hokas. I'm sorry. When you have to go anywhere, you might have to take them off for your meeting, but wear them to the plane, from the plane to the meeting, and all the way home. Because if your feet aren't
Love
happy,
it.
you are not happy.
Well, my feet are very happy in 5-inch heels. I'm just saying. And my road warrior travel hack is when you get to the hotel, ask if your room has space for a yoga mat, and then they'll upgrade you. Try it. I'm
Yoga.
serious, it works.
I will try
Yoga
it.
mat. All right. Advice you'd offer your younger self.
Wow. Advice to offer my younger self um, be nicer to yourself. Don't
Mm,
be
mm,
as critical. Don't always, live so much into the imposter syndrome feeling
mm,
that you don't have enough time to enjoy the great things that are going on around you, all of the
mm.
amazing good things that you've done. And that takes work to do that. At least it did for
Yeah,
me.
I love that. We're going to get back to that, including this notion of imposter syndrome, but not the kind you're necessarily thinking of. How about the last question you asked AI?
Oh, the last question I asked AI was actually the eyeball poster behind me. I actually took a picture of it and asked AI, "Can you tell me more about my poster?" which I've owned for probably 12 to 15 years. And it turns out it is a 1911 poster for all. The only word I could make out in that text was hygiene, but it was actually a conference in Dresden, Germany in 1911 about health and wellness, medicine and sleep and people. And it
All
just
right.
bizarrely, it's been a part of my life even longer than I've been a part of IWBI.
An early precursor to Well Summits.
Sure.
How about a walk-on song for your next keynote address? I know you always have one in mind.
Rachel, it's been a long time since I've done that, and I really there's so much music that I'm listening to now that it is not necessarily about getting my heart pumping. It's about
Mm,
slowing me down and enjoying.
mm,
I listen to as I'm gardening, and I other than my podcast, which I'm truly addicted to, I listen to a lot of classical music and
mm.
enjoy that. I did, and I'll tell you why later, but I did download Taylor Swift's latest album, which I am enjoying. And remind me later. Ask me why I did that.
Okay, I will. That's a deal, as my son would say. All right, last question for you. One thing that you do every day to take care of yourself.
What I do every day to take care of myself is I start the morning with a large glass of room temperature water before I have
Mm,
my coffee. And I've limited my coffee. You will laugh at this to 2 cups of black coffee per day only. If I want something later, I have a cup of tea. And it's really about everything to me these days. And I think it's reflected in the way I feel about myself physically and everything. Everything is about the slow and meaningful wake up. When I wake up in the morning, I don't like run out of bed like something is on fire. I
mm,
literally stretch, open my eyes slowly, engage with my dog, who's usually like all over me. Um, Being, a part of this whole new chapter of my life where you want to be present, you want to enjoy your coffee, not just use it as a stimulant.
mm.
You want to start the day in a way that really sets the tone for the entire rest of the day. That's to me what I think is the
Mm.
best thing I can do.
Well, that's the perfect pivot into our conversation because if I could think of one, set of words to describe this chapter that you've been talking about and how you're living into it, it's that slow and meaningful wake up. And I want you to linger on that for a little bit. Every time I see you lately, I think Rick Fedrizzi must have made some kind of deal with the devil because you're the only person that I know of a particular age demo who is aging backwards. Like, would you agree that you're healthier today than when I met you 20 years ago?
No doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
unbelievable. I mean, that is a at 71, and I hope you don't mind me giving that spoiler
No,
alert, but you did put it in the org-wide email, so I figured it was okay. At
absolutely.
71, how many people can say that?
Well,
So, what's behind it? How did you get there?
it's really funny. I didn't know that it would happen. In fact, I semi-retired. I left the job of CEO in 2019, which you remember that distinctly, I'm sure. And in that time period, during COVID lockdown and a year or two later, I will admit I was kind of stumbling. I kept looking at my email, thinking that my what used to be 80 or 90 emails a day that I had to engage with. About 75% of those now were from Pottery Barn and Wayfair and a variety of other things that had nothing to do with work or the previous 30 years of market transformation I was a part of. And that mentally took a lot out of me. And I one of the things I did, and I'm really proud of, that I had always talked about. And later I engaged a trainer, a physical trainer, and that's one thing. But before the trainer, I actually engaged in some therapy, and I will call that my mental training. And I had the ability for the very first time in a long time to sit down with someone and talk about my life in regards of, having been working since from 14 years old and now at that point I was like 68 or 67 and in this tornado of a set of circumstances that consumed me, and now I had this massive void, and it was the kind of thing. I didn't have the void in the sense of, sadly for some people that have nothing, because what happened in the void, what opened up was my vision to see that I have like an amazing, beautiful wife that has been with me from the very beginning, from undergraduate school. I have beautiful children. I have amazing grandchildren. I was smart enough during all of that time in the tornado to secure enough of a solid home existence that truly mattered. And ultimately, when the clouds began to part, and anyone who's ever confused or needs to discuss things with somebody, I highly recommend a therapist that can coach you through some of those feelings, at least how to deal with the feelings. The whole thing is really not about giving you an answer. It's about when you get those feelings of loss or separation or anxiety, how do you work through those? That's what that was about. And when the fog began to lift, I saw
Mm,
these beautiful things that I had invested in all those years. I was smart enough to never ignore those or not give to those. and they were there, and they were now my full-time job. And as I had the ability to be a part of that in a bigger way, my importance became more, and I wanted to be around more for them. I wanted more time with my grandchildren. I
Mhm.
wanted to be a part of this really new transformation time I had in my life. And I knew I had to better take care of myself. I knew I had to eat less and drink less and exercise more and hire a trainer and engage in my my garden and my passion. Most importantly, in what I'm learning, and this is something that we're all finding is true in the wellness world, relationships are
Yeah.
everything. There, you know, your sleep is important, your eating is important, your relationships, how you engage with people and connect with people. It's probably, you know, and they say, you know, relationships are the new smoking. You know, it's like you, if you don't have them, if you don't have friends to talk to, people to share your best parts of your day and your worst parts of your day with, and be there for them, it really affects your health in a negative way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Loneliness epidemic that we're in
yeah.
the middle of. I'm glad you mentioned therapy. I wasn't sure if you were going to. And I remember you saying when you were telling me about it for the first time that you likely wouldn't have sought out a therapist if you hadn't come to IWBI. Can you say a little bit more about that?
I can thank the many wonderful employees of IWBI for a lot of my current positive, healthy state that I have right now. I was immersed and surrounded by young, amazing, transformative people that had advanced degrees in fitness and movement, nutrition, lighting, water, all of the health aspects that were a part of them, and they're proud of what they've learned in school and advanced through the well standard, and they're proud to share that with me and talk to me about it and tell me the benefits and all of those things being a part of this. Then understanding, you know, the detrimental part of not getting a good night's sleep and about having too much sugar, too much alcohol, and the things that affect us, having the absence of true relationships in your life, all of those things combining to a point where, oh, you may have to engage help on some of these things. So the
Mhm.
mental side of this case, which is almost equal to the physical side of understanding who you are and why you're feeling how you are, and kind of carving out a path to advance out of those feelings. That is what I,
Mm,
being a part of the well team, felt so safe in doing. That's why I feel so safe talking about it now. That's why I
mm,
felt so good writing that piece for the team last week, helping them understand, you know, your parents are probably my age. You will someday blink and you will be my age, and be the person that is not afraid to talk about their age, talk about their journey, talk about their failures, talk about the things that have mattered to them, and in a way that will help other people going forward. You know,
mm,
I've had people, when I tell anybody that I had a 25-year career at Carrier Corporation, I was doing that my best work imaginable, and I was downsized out of the organization. And I've had people say to me, "You, what do you mean, Rick? You were downsized, you were fired, you were let go?" And I'm like, absolutely. And you know what? It didn't kill me. It made me stronger. It gave me more passion to succeed on so many levels. And ultimately, I would say, and I say thank you to whoever that guy was that did that. But you know, I got the best professional training in my life at Carrier Corporation, and I got one of the best life lessons I ever could have gotten from Carrier Corporation. And that's a shout out, Carrier Corporation, to anybody on the line today.
wait, let's stay on the carrier train. I
Yeah.
want you to tell a carrier, close out your story first, and then I want you to tell us another carrier story, which I
Well,
think is just legendary, and I want to make sure it's on record.
I'm just saying that all of the experiences we have in our life, somehow in our brains we perceive them as failures, and
Yeah.
we're all trained. Oh, you don't talk about your failures. I am a firm believer through my experiences that talking about your failures gives you the ability to talk about your successes. And it's only when you combine those two that you give people a real understanding of who you are and what's possible going forward. And so I'm really proud of sharing that information for anyone that's ever interested in talking about it.
Gorgeous. It's a master class in leadership and legacy. I want to come back to this question about legacy in just a moment. Well, I guess this story is about legacy too, but on the lighter side of things. So, I think it's probably fair to say that few, if any, organizations worldwide have had a greater influence on shaping the global sustainability movement than USGBC. And one of the things that USGBC did best was gamify achievements through certifications. But
Right.
one thing that I don't think most people on this line probably know is that one of the earliest iterations of sustainability labels was actually something that you pioneered in something of a spontaneous way. One might even say haphazard in the beginnings when you were a carrier. So tell us that story about one of the very earliest instances of sustainability labels.
Yeah, I can make it quick. When I had this job of director of environmental marketing at Carrier Corporation, I was there in that job primarily to help them overcome the issue of refrigerants, which the primary refrigerant in their line was going to be phased out by the EPA at a certain point. Ultimately, that discussion led to, okay, Rick, can you come in and help us create a environmentally they want everything was environmentally friendly back then. Said no, we need to be environmentally responsible. And you were right to mention Hawkins' book, as I uncovered that book and started understanding what a corporation, an industrial entity means to the environment, there's so many different layers of that. So to come in and say we're green because of this refrigerant would be an absolute joke. It couldn't happen. So I basically started tearing apart the entire product line, understanding sound, the acoustic levels of them, the energy levels of them, the packaging elements of them. The refrigerants obviously were a really important thing. The recycled content and recyclability of the products and materials and packaging. And I said, in order to get people to do that, if I ever created a spreadsheet or a white paper and said all these things are important for the environment, that wouldn't have gone anywhere. Luckily, I have always been a visual learner. That's how I understand the world is through vision. So I decided in each of those elements, which I called icons, I would create a different icon for each of those metrics. And I did. And I had a friend of mine who was a graphic designer design these really cool just a one little green sticker that had the air movement, the energy thing, the acoustic thing. And then I had these sheets of stickers. Luckily, the next week we were going to the ASHRAE show in McCormick Place in Chicago. And I decided in order to kick this off that I was going to launch my program, which was called Working on a Better World Inside and Out. Back then, you had the big gratuitous picture of the globe. Obviously, you had to have that to show you were environmentally aware. But I used the word working on instead of like, we have the solution. We're working on the plan. We may get to an answer someday, we may never, but ultimately we are working on this plan. And I went around to the entire carrier display, which actually was probably, if Kimberly Lewis taught me properly, probably, I don't know, 700 or 800 square feet of space, chillers, room air conditioners, air handlers, residential equipment. And I walked around with my stickers and I started putting labels on the products. And I did it with it was my Rick Fedrizzi swag, a stupid, wild ass guess of what this really would do. I didn't completely know what the bell rating was on the acoustics or the energy performance ratings, but I looked at the literature and knew that this was better than it was last year. So every time there was an improvement, I gave them a sticker and another. So some of the equipment had 6 stickers, some had 2 stickers, some had no stickers. And product managers who 20 minutes before this came up and they were like, get out of here. What are you doing here? Just go away. Why are you they had no interest in what I was doing. The minute the stickers were applied, it was you were back in kindergarten. Why did he get two stickers? Why don't I have any stickers? And it was about the sticker. It was about and so
Of course, it's always about the
I
sticker.
took that thinking to USGBC, and when USGBC was developing lead, and don't get me wrong, Rick Fedrizzi didn't develop lead. There was a tremendous amount of intelligent, accomplished individuals in all of the areas of energy, water, waste, materials, and other areas. Those were the folks that had all this information, brought it all together, and I felt it was important if you're going to create a rating tool that you have some visual reference of what these mean. And that became the different areas of lead. And that became the way that even today you start looking at elements of lead and you see an icon associated with it.
Amazing. Such a good story. And incredible to just think about tapping into like those most basic motivators for us as human beings. One of our former colleagues at USGBC said there's only two things that really motivate people, comparison and competition.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, those things are really one and the same. And that's exactly what was happening with
Yeah.
that sticker instance. I was just having a chance to scroll through some of our friends who have logged into this webcast. I was going to ask you a question about your proudest achievement, given that, so many of the people I figured would be gathered on this webcast are standing on the shoulders of giants like yours. Now I'm looking at this guest list and realizing it's all the giants in the room. It's like Beth Hyder and Emily Turk and Gail Vittori and John Harrison and Jennifer Berthelot-Jelovic, Joseph Murphy, Joyce Lee, Linda Sorrento, Anthony Bernheim, Brian Dunbar, Claire Barnett. I'm sorry if I have missed any of you on the line, but like what a group that's assembled to
Wow.
hear some of these stories. And I'd love it if any of you would put some of your own examples into the chat for the question I'm about to ask. But Rick, so much you look back on, so much momentum that you've been a part of creating, so much change that you've been a part of driving. When you look back across all of these years of experience, what's your singular proudest moment or your singular greatest achievement to date?
Um, I would say, and Rachel, you were closely associated with this, but the entire world of my educational training, my work at Carrier, my early work at U.S. Green Building Council, and what I cared about related to people and health, that all came together in the evolution of the Center for Green Schools. When I had the ability, and thanks to you in particular, you were able to take that idea and turn it into a juggernaut, which exists today, and has this outreach around the world. When I was able to bring a lead plaque and now weld plaques to a school, and I saw the unbelievable physical surroundings that did nothing but nurture health and engagement and education and the ability for teachers and children to connect in a way that they were just not able to do before. When I saw what it meant to a community, when I look at the work of Teresa Lehman and the great work that she's done in Wisconsin, I believe. Having the elements of all those schools and all those communities, they don't even want to think of building a school a different way. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm proud of the fact that we have $150 million towers in Manhattan and everywhere else that have a LEED certification or a WELL certification. But when I see a small school with those certifications, and I know someone took the time to get a school board to understand it, to get a community to pass that legislation, to fund a project like that, and have these children benefit. And that benefit, they bring that education home with them. Mom and dad, I learned this at school. Can we do this here? Can we change our light bulbs? Can we use less water? Can we get rid of plastic? All of those things matter so much. And this teachers who give their life to this and get paid relatively low amounts compared to most other professions, they, for maybe the very first time in a long time, feel respected as well. And that these buildings nurture them. So yeah, if I had to boil it down to
Mm,
one thing, I would say that
mm.
taking everything, turning it into and protecting. I mean, you know how many years that entity, the Center for Green Schools, was under fire. Not enough funding, not enough support, politics, all these things coming together. You have to fight tooth and nail to protect those things to keep them alive, and that's why I think that I would say that right now.
You did. And for that, I am grateful. And there are a bunch of people on the line who I know are equally grateful and continue that school's focused work in your legacy. So, whew, okay. Well, I mean, one of the things I would love for you to reflect on a little bit are like, what are these universal truths that you could pull out of, all that you've learned advancing the green building and healthy buildings movements over the last 20, 30 years? What are those like truths that you could extricate so that such that any person who is trying to drive forward with market transformation, like today, the world is one way, and with market transformation, the world will look slightly differently. Like, what could you distill from your learnings that could be universally applied to anybody advancing market transformation?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot lately, and it's really funny. First of all, I was thinking about one of the best pieces, one of the best things that I ever heard as far as a statement goes that really meant a lot to me, and I think I've used it 1,000 times in my speeches, but it was always that we must always strive to obsolete our greatest triumph. And I never really I looked into that a while ago as well. That's probably what I asked AI even before this question. But
Mm.
I wasn't sure where that came up from. But to obsolete your greatest triumph, which to me sounds almost like biblical. It's so old.
Yeah.
But actually, the first person that I could find that said it was a guy named Mario Savio, who was a human rights activist at Berkeley in around 1964. And he used that statement. And when I locked into that statement, I kept thinking, what I love about this is the minute that your brain goes, ha, we did it. We're done. Great job, everybody. That is not the minute that you go, okay, it's over. Let's just ride this train. What that is the moment you say, what's next?
What's
How do
next?
how do I how do I eclipse what we did here? And how do I advance that for the future? And I will say to anyone listening today, the world that we're living in today, and we all clearly can see that it's broken in a variety of ways. Here in the United States and many places around the world, it's broken. We are going to have to fix it again. And we can't take just the old standard lead system or the old standard well system or any kind of way of looking at a metric and saying, this is all we have to do. Let's just get everybody back in a building that's certified and the world is a better place. I really think now is the time for people to start thinking, what is the next move? What is the next organization? Who are the next leaders of this? What kind of elements of this can we bring together? And ultimately, my whole idea that has been part of both organizations that I've been a part of, it's a very simple thing. Number one, you need a clear strategy, a mission. What are you here to do? Okay. We know what it is on the well side, what we've done there, and you define that clearly. Then you need a tool because the tool is not only a way to measure that performance, but it's a way to communicate to that outside world again what it all means.
Yeah.
What matters is seeing that plaque or that representation and having someone ask you the question, hey, what is that? Like, why does this building have that? And why doesn't my building have that? And you have the ability to engage, talk about the elements of well, talk about the things that matter, and ultimately engage in that way. And then lastly, there is nothing more important than the connection between people. You need a place to convene them, to network with them, to help each other learn and to learn from them. And when you put those three things together, the strategy, the tool itself, and the place to convene or learn, you've now created the shell of something that can build a very powerful movement and an organization. It did it for USGBC. I believe it's done it for World Wildlife. It's done it for IWBI and Well. It's done it for probably 100 other NGOs that we can think of or for benefit organizations. All of those have the ability to benefit from those things. But it really is, it's you have to keep it simple. But I would also say right now, people need to start getting in rooms and thinking about how to rebuild the future because the future is, and I know we're doing that at Well, I know with One Well and everything, we've got a plan in place for the
Yeah.
next 20, 30 years. And that's how people have got to be thinking right now.
Mm-hmm. Some great reactions in the chat to this notion of fixing it again together. It reminds me this notion of triumphing our best achievement and really like getting prepared for what's ahead. Another quote that's often misattributed: "We are the ones that we've been waiting for." People always think that it was Barack Obama. It may have been from a Hopi elder. Nobody can find it in writing. The earliest instance of it, I think, comes from June Jordan, a poet in 1978. And the full title of that book, um, or rather, the full title of a book by her friend Alice Walker, in which she quotes her, is called "We are the ones we have been waiting for, inner light in a time of darkness." But I just love that idea. Like, we are the ones. And one of the things that I most revere about your leadership is that idea of like challenging us to come up with an idea that's that more epic than the one before, and then going like, great, what do you need? What do you need to make this happen? Like, that was
Absolutely.
the most mind-blowing thing about coming to work at USGBC was that, if you had an idea that was big enough, great enough, exciting about enough, you, Rick, were going to figure out how to resource it. And that's definitely something that I've tried to bring to the job at IWBI, is like just immense sponsorship for the boldest of ideas.
And
You got to
and
have that.
what we did, Rachel, if you remember, which I strongly like support, is the idea that we didn't walk into this opportunity at USGBC. We didn't walk in and say, "Hey, look at us, we have all the answers." What we did
Right.
is we created a large tent to invite everybody inside the tent. There were some people that wanted no part of us. It's like, who are you and why are you here? But the ones that did engage with us, and I will say the American Institute of Architects Committee on the Environment, not the AIA itself. They wanted nothing to do with us. But the Committee on the Environment, who I call like almost the leaders of the modern green building movement from the very beginning, they had assembled and tried to bring people together and created a document and have these things going. I don't think they had the right plan to build a massive movement, and I think that was what we did together. We brought in experts like Gail Vittori and Plenty Fisk, who in their center for 50 years had been building this movement of an organization and a community and helping us understand how all of those pieces fit together. And then that gave us the ability to reach out further and engage other groups like the Rocky Mountain Institute and other technical groups, the Department of Energy. Thank God for Mark Ginsburg and the ability to bring people together and support their great ideas and their efforts. All those things coming together, that collaboration of a community is how you get stuff done. It's never about the I, it's always about the we. And that's I mean that's it seems simple, but the minute that anybody gets this much success, they all want to think, oh, it was just about them. And it's never about a small person or a small group. It's about the community itself.
I absolutely think that that's one of the fundamental laws of market transformation too, is like the importance of co-creation and making that tent bigger and bigger over time. Otherwise you just end up with that preaching to the choir, self-licking ice cream cone, as Roger Platt used to say, phenomenon. Um, and so you've got to keep, you've got to create the tent, then you've got to keep expanding it. You've got to keep
Right.
inviting people in. Um, I want to talk a little bit about mentorship and sponsorship. We've touched on this a little bit already, but you do it differently and better than anyone I've known. And I say that like from this deep well of experience that I've had in being mentored by you. And one of the superpowers that you have is to really see someone, like is to really like see into their being and to understand what it is that motivates them, what it is that is going to challenge them and keep them engaged. I remember we were having a conversation some years after the Center for Green Schools was created in 2010. So for those on the line as background, Rick Fedrizzi walks into my office on a Friday. He says, Gutter, because that was what my last name was back then and what he called me, Gutter, we're going to start a Center for Green Schools. Can you have a business plan by Monday? It was Friday. I got that business plan together with a little help from my friend
True
Roger
story, by the
Limoges.
way.
True story. We went and the first funding pitch we ever did, we pitched for $10 million, which was like outrageous and almost offensive, that amount. And we got $3.3 million in unrestricted funding, and the rest is just history. What I said to you years later was, when you came into my office that day, I was just at the very beginning of thinking to myself, I got to figure out what I'm going to do next. Like, I can't see a track anymore at this organization. I don't want my boss's job. By the way, I just texted with my first boss at USGBC this morning. Hi, Doug. Uh, I don't want my peer's job. Like, I can't see where I would go in this organization. You said, I knew that. That's why I knew we had to start the Center for Green Schools. But you like have that magic ability, even in a room full of people you haven't met yet, to like see the person who needs to be seen, know how they need to be acknowledged or filled or inspired or lifted up. How? Like what is that superpower? How do we channel a little bit of that ourselves?
I I don't know. I know the answer to that. I know that it's something that I've always been good at. I can spot. I remember going to my kids' soccer games when they were little kids, and my kids were doing fine, but I'd spot some other little child on the sidelines that was feeling bad and not getting enough, and I'd try to. You could just, it just like was, it's like a radar that, you can spot. It's not just sadness, but sometimes people what bothers me is when I know somebody is extremely bright and really accomplished, but what they don't have is that social skill side of it. They don't have the ability to make good eye contact or give a firm handshake or completely like focus their thought to give you an idea of what they would like to do, that elevator speech in a period of time to give you an idea of what they would want. And so one of the things that I've tried to do with almost any young person I've met, and I mentor young people right now, and I really try to help them understand that your very first calling card is not the calling card. It is your eyes in your hand and that determination to tell this person why they need to invest more time talking to you, engaging with you, thinking about this conversation. And to me, that's an important. It's important to me because what I've learned through that is you can find some of the most amazing talent if you look for it that way. And finding that talent, and finding, I always try, and I've done a really good job of hiring people and seeking out people smarter than me. The worst thing a leader can do is have an ego that says, I got to surround myself with people that aren't so smart. We've seen people or presidents that do that. And ultimately, we have to understand that a big job is really critical. And what you want is you want a variety of really high functioning, intelligent people that are a part of that. You want to empower them. You want to give them as much power in accomplishing what they need to do. You need to be very open with them, direct, open conversations, honesty, candor. Help them understand what your goals are. And ultimately, and maybe the most important is you need to give them a safety net. You need to give them psychological safety that we're in this together. I don't have all the answers. You're not going to have all the answers, but I know you're going to do everything you can to succeed in the most powerful way. So I've got your back. And that to me is what just opens up the floodgates, and you see
Yeah.
people perform at the highest levels because they feel safe. They don't feel that they're going to be punished for one bad decision.
I totally agree with you that that psychological safety component is like the biggest gift of all. And I can literally remember specific examples of when I received that gift from you, or like when I knew that I really had that safety net under me. So I couldn't agree with that more. Like a big part of sponsorship is sponsoring people's failures,
Yeah.
not just sponsoring their successes. And I think you've
And
just
I
done
see
that
you do
so
that.
beautifully.
I see you do that every day with your team, Rachel. And I love the idea that this is something that gets passed on. These are the things we learn and
It
we
is,
bring
yeah.
them forward.
It's a real pay it forward moment. But of course, with reflection, we also get to think about what we would have done differently. So that's another question for you is when you look back on this incredibly storied career, what's something that you would do differently? Do you have regrets?
Oh, I don't have any regrets. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to have had this journey and this opportunity. I think again, I think, and I said this in the beginning, is I think I just wish I wish I knew what I know now and I had given myself a little bit of a break. And I think,
Yeah,
it's funny because I remember going to God knows how many green builds, in a row where I was so wound up and so nervous. And I mean, I would have a blood vessel in my eye that would pop.
I remember
I
literally.
almost always had a respiratory cold because I wasn't sleeping. I was just living on quad shot, Americanos and just like that was my life. I didn't enjoy the journey. I had moments where I was standing backstage in the dark behind the curtain with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and he was so joyful that the African Children's Choir was out there singing. He hugged me in an embrace that was so tight that it made me uncomfortable. And today I think of it and I'm like, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the reason why maybe someday I will get into heaven, it was hugging me and transferring his love and his gratitude and his energy. And I think in my brain, I was thinking, okay, when he gets done with this, he's going to go out there, and then I've got
Yeah,
to do this, and then Judith has got a speech for me over here, and that's where my brain was.
yeah.
Why didn't I have the ability then to be in that moment and just absorb all of that and enjoy it? And that's a regret that I guess I'm absolutely convinced. I wish it was different, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
But
that presence. I mean, you didn't lose that moment is the beautiful
no.
thing. You can still look back and reflect on that, but I absolutely agree with you. And especially when you're so consumed by the job, especially when the weight is on your shoulders as the leader of the organization. I was talking with Pratik about that the other day and just, trying to remind myself, like we can get into such this pattern of admiring all of the stressful things about our job, but how about the fact that I get to work with my best friends every day?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
Pratik as COO and you as chairman and Judith as chief of staff and Kimberly and Jason and the new folks on the team. Like, it's an incredible gift that we get to wake up and love what we do every day and work with such
So lucky.
extraordinary people. It's easy day to day to lose sight of that though. And I'm grateful that you're finding that presence. I want to read a little bit of the excerpt from your email to
Sure.
our organization last week, and then ask you to comment on it. So, for everybody on the line, Susan, our head of workplace wellbeing, writes these gorgeous reflections to our team every Friday. But more recently, she's started to seek out special editions written by various members of our team. And so last Friday was yours. And this is what you wrote. I'm happier and undoubtedly healthier in many measurable and meaningful ways, more than I was through much of the prior 3 decades. That may sound counterintuitive, but the shift did not come from a miracle supplement or extreme discipline. It came from the absence of something, relentless stress. For years as a corporate executive and CEO of two organizations, I lived in constant motion, traveling roughly 60% of every working year. Airports, time zones, pressure, and performance became normal, even as they quietly eroded my health, sleep, and sense of balance. When that chapter ended, space opened up mentally and physically. What filled it was not idleness, but intention. A loving family, beautiful grandchildren, a couple of remarkable dogs, and my garden became daily anchors. They grounded me and, perhaps for the first time, gave me permission to care about myself without guilt. So I want to talk a little bit about that in some of our final moments of this webcast. And you
Yeah.
mentioned this, I think you alluded to it earlier. This sense of guilt that you had just for that simple act of self-care. And talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about where that came from as an executive and how you've
Sure.
managed to shed it over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it was my schedule for 25 years was basically commuting back and forth from Syracuse to Washington, D.C., or back and forth to New York City. The reason why that commute was important, my wife and I had a very, very important discussion a long time ago about our future and our children. And the idea was, my job would always be a big job that took me away and made me travel and everything. And Kathy was really smart. She said, our children need the stability of a place and a community, and having them here surrounded by their friends and in the neighborhood that we live in and the places that we love and family would give them that stability. So you can still do your work and come back. And I did. And that's why we made that decision together. It was the smartest thing that we had ever done as a couple, I think. And what that meant was Monday morning up, get on a plane or get in the car and drive. I would be in DC or New York until Thursday night or Friday, get back in the car, get back on a plane and fly back. I would have now 48 hours to do all the things I needed to do to take care of a family, take care of hopefully get in a date night with my wife, take care of my children, go to soccer games, go and engage at birthday parties. I had, a aging parent at that point that I had responsibility for. You always have, when you live in a 100-year-old home, you have the ability to be working on something at any given moment that's breaking, on and on and on. So in 48 hours after doing all of that, I honestly don't remember a day in 25 years where I had the time on a weekend to think about what I wanted or what I could do for myself. And I didn't hold resentment for that at all because I had done my responsibilities. My family was putting up with a lot because I wasn't around, so I was going to do what I could on the weekend to make sure that they were taken care of. So that was a lot of institutional guilt being, a part of my life. Am I always going to get that right? Am I getting it wrong? And then when it all stopped and all that space opened up, I was just like, wow, and trying to, we live in a society where the society itself, when people that were maybe highly effective in their previous jobs stop producing and just start being or relaxing or taking a breath or whether something I read was basically it's not a breath, it's exhaling. You're just exhaling
Mm,
the last
mm,
30 years. When you do that, a lot of the world is uncomfortable with that. People are like, well, what are you doing, Rick? Like, what's next? Like, are you, God forbid they say, are you retired? And you say, yeah, I'm pretty much retired now. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. Like, it's like,
mm,
and it's because we've associated these words with people that are contributing and that your worth is really all about your output. And it's like maybe that speed and that anxiety that you just got so used to, maybe that was wrong. Maybe your new normal of
mm,
calm and contribution at the local level and more time and advanced time with your family and your children and your garden and then taking your professional time and joining a board. I'm on a board of a local college, being a part of mentoring of younger students and teaching classes and doing maybe that's
Mm,
what you were meant to do at this point in your life. And to me, that's what
mm,
it meant.
mm,
It's just giving
mm.
myself that permission and not feeling guilty about it.
Well, gosh, I hope that if there's one thing that we all take from this conversation, it's not to wait until we get to this inflection point in our careers to give ourselves that permission for
Yeah.
self-care, for that exhale, and just for the presence to really enjoy the moments that we're getting this opportunity to participate in. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I've really been so inspired truly by the journey that you've been on the last couple of years. I find there are many more pages of wisdom to take from you and to aspire to because I see you living into this chapter with such intention, because I see you finding and discovering new parts of yourself and adopting new hobbies and new passions. And like, what else could we aspire to, in the next decades of our life? So I want to thank you for that. I also want to give you a chance to tell us why you downloaded the new Taylor Swift album.
Oh,
Before we
yeah.
close, I promised I would ask you.
Yeah. Okay. I've never really been a Taylor Swift fan. For
That
her
makes one
music,
of us.
it's a I do love the music, but sometimes the length of the poetry within the music just makes my head explode. However, I did start watching I did not watch the Eras Tour concert, but on Disney Plus, there is the end of the Era Tour, uh,
Yeah.
4 or 6 part documentary on how she built the largest grossing tour on the planet. So my marketing and business interest in that took over. I have never seen anything more compelling and riveting than watching this young, amazing talent with the most unbelievable business common sense and absolute drop dead dedication to her people, her team, her family, and delivering something that week after week after week of that tour has broken every record on the planet, maybe
Mm,
forever,
mm.
but done it in a way of giving back at the local
Yeah.
level, giving
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to people that were negatively affected in some way by her tour coming to town, giving back to her team in a way that they never expected in a million years, and doing it in a way that is always true to her art, which is the
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
and delivering a millionfold of opportunity and joy. So I'm so
A
blown away by
masterclass
that.
in leadership. Yeah.
I did not go to the concert, but I owed it to Taylor Swift to download that album, and I actually like it a lot. It's really
And
good.
so you did. It's a good album. I went to that tour. On the next webcast. You'll have to ask me about how I realized just days before we had our tickets to see the show in Lisbon that I realized I had booked us into the wrong city and was trying to book myself then into a city that was completely sold out because of the Taylor Swift concert.
Oh,
But that's for another day. Rick,
yeah.
if you are having a bad day, and I don't think you have many of those these days, definitely make sure you download the archive of this chat because I'm sure you haven't been able to read through it while we've been going through it. But wow,
No.
such lovely, lovely sentiments and comments from so many friends, old and new, in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining. This has
Can
been
I
so
say one
terrific,
more
Rick.
thing?
Please.
Just one more thing to any of the people, and I've seen a lot of the names pop up on the screen here. I just want to say, I want you all to understand. I hope you know that in every interaction that I've ever had with you, and any conversation, and any picture we ever took, in any way that we've somehow crossed our paths in the last 20 or 30 years, you have given me as much as whatever I have given you. And that is something that stayed with me and helped me become better and more effective on so many levels. So I just want people to know that.
Well, thank you. I know I speak for most of the folks on the line when I say the gratitude is all ours for everything you've shared today, all you've done for the movement, and really for the world. I hope that you all will tune in to our next Well Executive webcast. It's going to feature another one of our iconic Governance Council members, and it'll explore, just like we did today, how they take care of their people, their stakeholders, and customers, but most importantly, how they take care of themselves. This series is proudly sponsored by Daikin, leading innovation in heating, air conditioning, and ventilation technology for over 100 years, and whose generous support today made this interview possible. And if you haven't already, please join us for the flagship summit at New York Rudin's headquarters in New York City on Thursday, January 29th. That's right. This 1 week from this Thursday, we have an amazing roster of global leaders and forward-thinking change makers on the program. And the one and only Rick Fedrizzi will be our MC. Everyone there united in their commitment to creating people first places. It's going to sell out, so please grab your spot. Thank you again for being here and for all of the incredible wisdom, Rick, that you shared. We will see
Thank
you
you,
soon. I
Rachel.
am wishing
Thank
you
you,
all
Rachel,
well.
and thank you, Daikin. Take care, everyone.